All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in for our really exciting series that Eventing Nation is starting with Peter Gray. Peter Gray is a world-renowned dressage judge. He's been all over the world to judge some of the best riders in the world. He's freshly back from Aachen, and he will actually be a member of the ground jury for this fall's FEI World Championships for eventing in Italy. So we're very honored to have Peter join us for this first of hopefully what is many videos that we're going to be doing, where he and I, mostly him, are going to sit back and watch some famous tests that we can all learn a few things from. And I thought it would be really interesting to just kind of talk to Peter about what he's looking for as a judge at this level, how we can take some of these techniques to our own writing, and just kind of hear his perspective from all of the years of experience that he has, not only as a judge, but also as a writer. So, Peter, before we get started with today's test, I'd love to just kind of first hear your reaction about getting to judge at Aachen. I think that was the first time at Aachen for you. How was that? Do you get starstruck as a judge? Just tell me how that feels.
Hi, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really interested in the system of judging and educating other riders about what the judges are looking for. So I think these types of opportunities are very useful for everybody. The experience in Aachen was incredible. I've never judged in such high-level company, but I would say the crowds were the things that really impressed me, both to judge in front of a crowd like that and also to ride in front of a crowd. It's not something we get to do too often unless you're a Land Rover. So that in itself was really exciting, and the crowd is just not your normal crowd in Germany. They're very knowledgeable. They're very enthusiastic. They will let the judge know if they disagree with the score. They really love to cheer on the hometown favorites. It's a great experience. 50,000 people in the main stadium, a 5-star CDI, dressage, and CSI show jumping going on at the same time. So lots of action, lots of trade fair, parties, music, just an incredible atmosphere.
It seems like it. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be there, but also to be such an integral part of the competition too.
Yeah, the integral part of the competition, being a judge, it really wasn't any different from judging any other important competition. Every time we had a break in between blocks of riders, I refreshed myself and would come back and sit down at the table and say, okay, refocus. You've got to pick up with your judging in the same mode that you left it this morning at 8 o'clock or at 11 o'clock. So you've got to stay consistent for the whole day or the whole 2 days if it's a 2-day competition.
Would you say that is a challenge that you've had to, just with experience, get better with keeping your judging at the same level of objectivity throughout the whole day? Because I can't only imagine that after seeing so many tests in one day, especially over maybe 2 days, that that would be something you would have to really tell yourself is just remember to focus, and each horse is a new, presentation for you to look at.
Yeah, I think the other thing I just thought of as you were speaking, I'd like to mention that Marilyn Payne, my mentor, has mentioned this a few times, that the USEF education system for licensed officials is really, really good. So I think our North American judges who are good judges can go anywhere in the world and be right up to standard. I think the only difference is when you're judging in front of a large crowd, to stay focused and confident. Fortunately, I don't have a problem with confidence as being a judge, and I think that makes the decision making, which you have to do in a very split second for each movement, a little bit easier. I can't imagine feeling the pressure of high caliber riders or a championship competition. I can't imagine a judge feeling that pressure and not being able to perform. Certainly in the dressage judging, that would be really not a good experience.
Sure. Yeah, I can imagine. And, for us as writers, I think that is something that's so useful to learn from your perspective of what kind of goes into your mental state as you're judging. And, you know, for anybody watching who is looking for ways to volunteer or get more involved or just learn about the sport, one of the best ways you can do that is to sign up to Scribe. Peter is just one judge of many that travel the country at shows of all levels, and most shows are always looking for volunteers. So this is a great way. We're actually going to get to basically sit here as if we are Peter's scribes here while we're watching a test from Kentucky this spring. So we'll get to that in just a second. But before we do that, Peter, as a judge, I'd love to get some advice from you for our side of things as riders. You know, we come in, and I know me, when I was riding and competing, my brain just fell out of my head whenever I would go to start going around the ring. But the judges are watching that. So what's your advice for us as we're going in and wanting to make the best impression for you as the judge?
Well, I find myself in a very fortunate position that I can include myself in that us as riders category, because I'm still competing. At FEI levels of dressage, I don't event anymore, but I still wanted to be in a competition environment of some kind. And it shouldn't be alarming that event riders go into dressage, because we've done that all our lives. But I think as a judge, being also a rider keeps me humble. For example, Sarah Cosmplake has a great series of dressage schooling shows in Florida in the winter. And I took my horse to do the 5-star test before Land Rover. I said, you know, that'd be fun to ride that. Everyone else is there to practice the 5-star. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that extended canter to collected canter to stretch circle and canter is really quite a difficult movement. So I think the fact that I'm competing keeps me humble, and it keeps me real, and it keeps me wanting to be positive. So you also mentioned scribing. Scribing is such a great opportunity to advance your education. I highly recommend, not only for interested eventing enthusiasts, but competitors, take the opportunity to scribe a couple of times, because the learning opportunity is incredible. When I was competing at the international level on eventing, I thought I knew what the judges were looking for, but in those days we didn't have rider tests, and we didn't communicate much with judges. So honestly, I thought I was on the right track, but clearly I wasn't in many occasions. The other important thing is what you do after your warm-up and before you go into the main arena, and then to go around the main arena. Well, first of all, in the final moments of your warm-up, it's the opportunity to get your horse mentally prepared to go into the competition arena. You're not, I don't think, physically going to get him more in front of the aids or more energized in those last few minutes without creating tension. So I think the first thing to think about is the mental preparation for that entrance down the center line. The next thing is to be aware of time management. Time management for your 2 minutes, your 1.5 minutes going around the ring. So first of all, be ready to go right in as soon as the other rider comes out. The quicker you're in there, the more time you're going to have around the arena. Second thing is do something that makes sense as far as preparing your horse to go down that center line. And third of all, show the judge something you can do, not something you can't do. In other words, I had a rider recently at an FEI competition, spent a lot of time dilly-dallying and walk, waiting for the bell to go. And it just so happened the walk was very lateral and not a good quality gait of this particular horse. So my advice to her would be never walk unless until you have to. So already I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that walk is going to be a 5. What a pity. We're not supposed to prejudge, but we can't help but have opinions as we see things happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's all stuff that we don't think about as our brains are falling out of our heads, like I said. And I think it's important to be able to take that breath and think, okay, I'm already being watched.
Yeah. The other thing is 45 seconds after the whistle goes, at Aachen, in the pure dressage, in the team competition, Ingrid Kilimke was on the team competition, and she entered and got a -2 for being late. I mean, what a way to start your test.
Wow.
So don't waste any points.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're going to move into our first test, which is a man who really does not waste points. We have enjoyed learning that about him over these past few years. And it's our Kentucky winner from this year. So we are going to actually go through and watch Michael Jung and fischerChipmunk's dressage test from Kentucky in April of this year. So this was the winning test that went on to be Michael Jung's lowest 5-star finish ever. So it's a really great example of what judges are looking for. And, you know, as I'm getting this set up here, Peter, one thing that I think is really interesting is, you know, Michael, I would say, does not necessarily have horses that are, they're flashy and they're fancy and they're nice, but they're not horses that you're seeing at the ring like, oh my gosh, I have to watch this test because this is just such an exuberant mover. And I think sometimes we think of these winning dressage horses as these incredibly fancy, expressive movers. And honestly, I think what Michael does really well is he really shows off his horse's abilities. Would you agree with that assessment, or what's your thought?
Absolutely. He shows the horse in all 3 gaits to the best of the horse's abilities. And what I would like the listeners to really focus on is how deep he goes into the corner. All of our coaches at all levels tell us to go deep in the corner, but the judge is judging the freedom of the gait. Now, with some horses that don't have a high degree of balance or collection, going deep into the corner is actually going to take away from the quality of that trot or canter or walk. So Michael shows a very nice balance of going deep enough into the corner, but in every corner he shows suppleness, which is bend, and balance, and he maintains the power. He maintains the forwardness of the gait. It's so disappointing when riders actually slow down the canter to go deep in the canter, because you're destroying the natural quality of the gait, the marks that I would have given to the gait, and what we're judging, the freedom of the gait. So it does not only restrict the horse's movement, which you normally associate with overbalancing the horse, but by you know, the corners almost overbalancing the horse.
That's very interesting. I think a very good tip for a lot of us who have had that deep in the corners drilled into our heads. That's something that you think you probably see a lot.
Grand Prix and Pure Dressage Grand Prix, the expectation is that the horse's power and balance and strength and degree of collection, which is the uphill and enhanced engagement, is such that the expectation is that you go more deep into the corner, but not in eventing.
Interesting. Okay, well, any other preamble that we think we should have? Maybe we should talk about the new harmony mark also before, so that's something that we can watch with this in mind, because this is a new feature of the dressage test that the previous marks that for rider and that sort of thing are no more, and we are now just working with one harmony mark. Can you talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah, I think we have a little bit of, as judges, a little bit of a poetic license to do our own thing. We've got to follow guidelines of pathway of training, but for me, what influences me with the harmony mark is how I was ridden, how I was taught to ride and train a horse, which is with compassion and softness and forward thinking. One of my favorite comments to write at the bottom of the dressage test is happy horse equals happy judge. So I want to see a happy, harmonious performance. I give a lot of credit to riders that ride beautifully and horses who are confident in the connection, maybe lacking a little bit of balance, but showing that the training is correct.
Really interesting. I think that mark helps to, like you said, give you that poetic license. So, well, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into Michael Jung's test. Before we get started, I just want to give a massive shout out to everybody at the USEF Network who provided the live stream for us, as always, from Kentucky, and has also generously provided these videos for us to go back and analyze now. So we'll have a couple more videos from Kentucky of this year coming your way. And I think we'll hopefully open it up to have, you guys submit your videos from time to time. And we're also going to take requests for videos that we should go back and watch from eventing years past. So I'm going to hit play, and I will shut up and let Peter basically talk us through as if he is judging this test, and we will just watch and learn. So Peter, take it away.
Okay, so the canter entrance was very balanced. Somehow he gets this halt pretty much immediately, but without being abrupt, which is a real art. He was prompt into the trot with no walk steps. And what I loved is the C-track right was like a half 10-meter circle with bend. The second movement is medium trot, beautifully done, uphill balance, very engaged, and the tempo does not change. Beautiful outline as he goes through the short side, and he develops the half pass using the bend in the corner that he created between F and A, and he goes right into that half pass without missing a step of the tempo. These 8-meter circles, I think, are very difficult. We want to see suppleness and balance. He showed both of those things. The shoulder into the right, he maintained the right bend. So scores-wise, I'd be giving 8 for the medium, 7.5 for the 8-meter circle, 8 for the shoulder in. This extended trot, I would go for a 9 there, and 8.5 for the transition to collect it. He was engaged and uphill. Again, using the right bend he created between A and K to go smoothly straight into that half pass. That would be a 9 for me. He maintained cadence and suspension in the trot. The other 8-meter circle was 7.5. That would be a little bit better as far as the balance goes. So 8, flexion, suppleness, angle, another 8.5. The transition to walk at C, this is medium walk. He allowed the horse to go into a free walk frame. So that would be 6. Now we're in extended walk. This would only be a maximum of 7 for me. The pole needs to be lower at the same level of the wither and the nose more forward. The nose didn't come more forward. Now we have a transition at E to another short diagonal in medium walk. It's difficult to see from the screen right there, but I love the position of the nose. Yes, for medium walk, only 7 because the pole needs to be higher, probably 7.5. Because the horse is using his whole body loose. This is more of the frame we want to see in medium walk. Lovely outline, the nose slightly ahead of the vertical, which is where it should be. My goodness, if there was ever a 10 for the halt, that would be a halt. The rein back, uphill, diagonal pairs, could be more prompt into the canter, but just a beautiful smooth transition. I would have given a 9 for that rein back to canter, but I then drop it down to a 7.5 or 8 because you noticed he took a half step forward from the halt before the rein back, a little bit miscommunication there. I know we canter half circle. The fluency of the change is so dramatic there. When a judge says fluency, it means that the canter stride is airborne. There's no restriction, shortening the stride, tightening the hindquarter. It's smooth and forward. Half pass to the right, he's showing a lovely position. The bend and flexion is correct. So that first flying change would be probably a 7.5, 8 for the half pass, and 8 for that other flying change because of the straightness. It was absolutely beautiful. Lovely sideways jump here. The hind legs do not cross over in the canter half pass, but the sideways flow is beautiful. You can see that right to left flying change. Excellent. That's got to be a 9. It was quality canter, showed suspension, and straight as an arrow. Extended canter, I would be on an 8, but because there's no transition mark, I might drop it to 7.5 because he could have, in my mind, come and showed more balance at the end of that long diagonal. Very nice stretch. I'm a stretch fanatic. I would have liked a little bit more, but still good enough for 7.5. Here we're getting ready for another flying change. Not quite as straight through the body, a little bit over flexing to the right. So I bring it down from an 8 to a 7.5. Very nicely balanced onto the center line. Again, he comes onto the center line more like a half 10-meter circle than a deep corner. Well, if you're ever going to give a 10 for the halts and salute, that might have been your 10. Again, beautifully balanced into the halt. Prompt, but not abrupt. Square, the horse was very focused, stayed on the bit, stayed soft, and obedient through the whole halt, which of course was straight and very, very square. Harmony mark, you'd have to be on a 9 because this was not only a great example for riders how to ride the test, but honestly for judges to see the components of the technicality of each of the movements demonstrated so beautifully. It isn't the fanciest horse in the world, but he has what we call cadence. Cadence is where the tempo of the gait, let's think of the trot, does not change. It's 1-2, but when we add energy and create a little bit of suspension, which we call impulsion, and if that's consistent through every step of every movement, this goes a long way to securing very high marks from the judge. Beautiful walk as he is leaving the ring. Very proud horse, very proud rider.
I think I love Michael's horses a lot for what you just said, in the sense that I think it shows us as normal riders, not Michael Jung, that, you know, riding your horse to the best of your ability and to the best of your partnership and showing off that correctness will get you points where you may have lacked in expression before. And I think that is such a cool thing to take away from these types of tests and these types of horses.
Yep. So there's our 10 halt, but that just fine little half step forward before he went back, which would drop that right back to canter by 1 mark. Beautiful fluid change. Again, no tightening of the hind quarter. Everything's loose and free and correct. Once we start going above a 7 for the flying changes, you have to have the balance and the quality of the canter to achieve those scores, but he demonstrated that very nicely.
As you've seen this 5-star test evolve, you know, we've had a few different iterations of it, more than a few. Do you have any observations on how the test has changed for the better or for the worse? I mean, what are your thoughts on these updated tests and how they, you know, show off what you're looking for?
I don't think it's necessary to have any more degree of difficulty for event horses. I think what this test asks of the horses is as much as we need to see as judges. It really demonstrates the communication with the rider. It demonstrates the training that goes on at home. And for me, this is what going to a competition is all about, is it's showing the judge what you've achieved in your training at home. What did you think of the test?
I thought it was beautiful because, you know, for the reasons that I said before in terms of just correctness. And I think it's, if anything, the biggest takeaway I take away from Michael's riding is forward, like you said, flowing forward. So those are 2 of the things that we don't see in every test that I think is the ultimate mark of harmony.
Yeah, it's very difficult though when you ask riders to go more forward. In the test, you say more forward, the coaches say more forward. It's a fine line between going more forward and then getting too quick. And a ride that is too quick, you want to give good marks, but it just doesn't have the right feel of patience and balance. So it's not an easy thing to achieve, but I agree with you. Michael showed that beautifully. Forward enough to show the freedom of the gait, the engagement, the power inside the horse, but without overriding it so the horse starts to lose his balance.
Sure. And I think that's training skill, right? I mean, the balance comes before the collection and the ability to be correct. And so I think maybe skipping those steps is how you get to that quickness and rushness and off balance type of feeling. So
yeah, the other thing I might add, because I am competing and I'm a trainer and I'm also coaching a lot, I've really felt over the last 2 years that riding in the competition arena is almost like a different sport in the dressage. What we do in the warm-up and what we do at home, especially in the warm-up, is to get the horse physically and mentally ready for the competition arena. What I see, especially in North America, is so much micromanaging of the gaits in the competition arena, as if they're at home, as if they're in the first half of their training for the warm-up. It's almost like a different ride. You go in the ring and the ride is totally different. You stopped micromanaging, you stopped training, you show off what your horse can do without restriction, without overly balancing, and try to get one transition to flow into the next one in the smoothest way possible.
That makes sense. Well, Peter, thank you for your expertise and your perspective on this test. I think this is just one example of a test that we all aspire to have at least once in our life. I'm pretty sure I'm never going to get a 20, but maybe, hey, maybe there's hope. But thanks to your help, I think this is great for our education as writers and as competitors. So I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us today.
You're very welcome. That was fun.